Don't go away, Warwick. You're here for the next item, and the next item is to do with standing orders and attendance by electronic link. And maybe Councillor Darby, you'd like to move that. Councillor Walker, you'd like to second it?
Yes.
Yep. So if you'd like to speak, it seems like common sense to me, but if you'd like to speak to it, Warwick, and then questions and comments together from any councillor wanting to make an input.
Thank
Warwick.
you, Your Worship. The reason for bringing the report relates to the epidemic notice which commenced in March. And what the notice did was two things really. Firstly, it overrode council's standing orders and stated that all members could attend remotely. And the second thing that it did was to state that everybody who attending remotely counts towards the quorum. With the expiry of the notice, we go back to what we have in standing orders. And the report is to provide the opportunity to consider whether any changes need to be made to standing orders as a result of our experience with the COVID. Now, the notice was to expire yesterday, but on Tuesday, the notice was extended until the 24th of September. So I need to alert you to that. There's no urgency around that today. And that's it.
That's it. So, any comments or questions? Councillor Casey, and then I've got
Good questions, Warwick.
line.
My first is the 2 days notice. Does it have to be 2 days? What was the thinking behind it?
Well, the way that the standing order rules are at the moment is that at the meeting itself, the meeting gives approval for a member to attend remotely. But prior to that, the member needs to make arrangements, if you like, to attend remotely. The staff need to know who's attending and not attending, particularly if we go back to a situation where only those in the room create a quorum. 2 days' notice seemed reasonable at the time. That's what's in standing orders. That would have been put in by the Standing Order Working Party, which Councillor Darby chaired at the time.
Okay, the second question.
It does say just where possible to it, so it leaves a little bit of flexibility there,
The second
Councillor.
question relates to public forum by Skype.
Yes.
Is that provided for?
Yes, it is.
It is. So that's
We added it at the before the notice came out, actually, in order, and just in case it cropped up. But it wasn't needed for the emergency period. But we did have some presentations remotely during that period.
Oh, you love it.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper next in line.
Around the public forum, so it's not in this, you haven't got it in this report, you just...
It's already in standing orders. Yes. No.
I'm happy to move. Oh, you've already been moved.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Having a bit of difficulty finding the item, but assuming that we've made some commentary around the efficiency that this would cause councillors, time saving on our part, transport savings, meeting our climate change obligations, benchmarking ourselves against other cities. Have you covered off those things, Warwick?
We've made the comments under the sections in the report relating to climate change and so on, yes.
Okay.
I think,
knew you'd be onto it, Warwick.
Yeah. Okay, finally, Councillor Watson. Sorry, Councillor Coon.
In terms of the recommendation, so that the member who's seeking to attend by electronic link can't take part in the vote to give approval, whether they take part or not, but they then can vote on any given item and be counted the normal way. Okay. So they're not just Skyping in, they can then vote on any given item. I guess the slight alarm bells that ring for me is a situation where someone has to go early or doesn't come in. They're not there for the debate. They have no sense of what's being said, and they may be contacted, or a number of people are contacted, and that's not really in the spirit of a vote on any given issue. So my concern is how is that addressed then? It doesn't seem to be any way of addressing it under this regime.
That can happen physically at a meeting as well. People come in and out.
I think with all due respect, it's a bit different. So, there's any number of instances when votes are taken, and for perfectly valid reason, people may or may not be here, but that's just a given. But under this, we're dealing with a political environment. There's an opportunity for people just to be rung in for the vote, and they're not involved in the debate. So people that come and go out here, generally they're going to the toilet or something. They're only out for a relatively limited time. This could be someone not in at the meeting at all. So I'm putting that up as a practical concern that I've got that is open to some degree of abuse, conceivably, if you're cynical as I am.
Yeah.
Your Worship, we haven't attempted to address that situation in the standing orders.
Look, I think theoretically that could be a problem, Councillor, but my experience during lockdown and when we had all of our meetings on Skype was that people were pretty responsible in what they did. And, from time to time, there'd be a vote on something and people were there and listening. They might have walked away for a moment to get a coffee or whatever. That is a potential disadvantage, but I think the advantages that Councillor Walker has outlined are potential advantages. My own preference, I like to be here, I like to meet with people, talk to people, watch people's body language on it, but my own general view is that this is a reasonable balance between those factors. Let's hear some more views on that. Councillor Coombe.
Thank you. Is this the time for comment?
Questions and comment together.
I think I had my question answered, so just in clarifying, so if any member dialing in is counted for quorum and isn't counted for quorum but can vote?
During the epidemic notice period, they counted towards the quorum, but once that expires, they're not. You have to be physically present in the room.
So this would then update that?
This is saying that, previously you had to have special situation in order to attend remotely. This is saying that it's now possible for a member to attend because it's just their preference. But if they are able to attend and there's a need for them to attend to make up the quorum in the room, then they must attend physically.
Yeah. I would like to make a few comments opposing this amendment to the standing orders, and I think it picks up on some of the comments that Councillor Watson made, in that I think we did show how we could be very effective in using electronic online meeting through the emergency committee, and we all came together and we all got behind that. And I do think we need to embrace the technology and look at new ways of doing things. But I think that worked very effectively because we were all doing it. And from a governance perspective, a big downside of that is that we couldn't even see the chair. And so we had a big technology problem. And I know I did keep keep hassling the mayor about putting his camera on, because I just felt all of those, and at one point, through the many debates we had, I was making an impassioned comments, and I realised there was no one listening to me. And then Councillor Darby said, "No, I'm here, Pippa. Can you hear me?" And Councillor Watson knows that he almost pushed me over the edge of online rage. Sorry, Councillor Walker. Sorry, apologies. He knows that he almost pushed me over the edge. But anyway. Move on. So in terms of, the seriousness, the point I'm really wanting to make is about good governance of when we're making decisions, particularly at governing body, there are all the elements that go in decision making, particularly non-verbal clues, eye contact, things that you cannot see online. And I just feel that that when we're all online, that's fine, but where you have half in the room or half sitting at home, maybe in the spa pool, as I've heard has happened in some situations of online meetings.
That wasn't me.
I wasn't no one around this table, but there are lots of issues in terms of moving into confidential. We've had issues with technology. So for all those reasons, I feel quite strongly that, yes, we should embrace the opportunities we have for using technology, but this is something that to just do it because a member prefers, I think, is crossing a line of moving into poor governance and not an ideal situation for good decision making.
Thank you, Councillor. Your speech has prompted almost everybody to want to speak, so I'm going to encourage people to try to make new points if they can that haven't been made already, but it is a significant issue for us. So Councillor Collins is next to speak. And I saw something.
Thanks, Sue. I'll be quick. I just wanted to, my only comment was, and picking up from what Councillor Coombe just said, is I have an anxiety around Skype for business, and that's all. And I wonder if, I think in the earlier times when we weren't turning on our cameras, it was because the Skype for business couldn't handle it. I think Zoom is a better platform, and that's probably got nothing to do with this, but I think if it's going to be an electronic link, then I think we need to go for the best platform. I'm happy with where this recommendation stands.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Question and a comment. My question is, so I decide that I don't want to come in one day, it's a bit wet, and I don't want to get up and travel in, so I just say I'm not coming and I put my notice in. And then I find that everybody else has done the same thing and you haven't got a quorum in the room. So who plays master and then decides who has to come in and who doesn't?
The chair and the CEO, because you've got to give 2 days' notice.
So the chair does?
The chair and the CEO, I think we've got listed there. We'll give the chairperson of the governing body or its committees and the chief executive at least 2 days written notice. That's to deal with the real problem that you refer to, is that if you could just ring in the morning because it was raining and you didn't want to get wet, you could create massive problems with a quorum. So that's why the 2 days. I'm sorry, I'm taking over your role there, Warwick. Yes. That's the answer, isn't it?
Yes, and I think the way it's handled in practice might vary from time to time. I've noticed in the past that there have been a couple of occasions where Sandra will just ask for volunteers, and the note will go out to everybody.
Okay, my comment through you, Mr. Chair, is look, I'm not very happy about this. I absolutely see how we can do better with electronic meetings from afar, but actually we put our hands up to be the governors of the city, and especially the cows. I think we need to be here in the room. Today we have 2 electronic Skype attendees, and my understanding is one's not well, or both are, one's recovering and one's not well. And I think that's a real and viable reason. But just because you prefer, I don't think that's right. I think that CALs should be absolutely compulsory at the very minimum if this was to go through. I also think that I think the risk for me and D is you prefer. You're not saying because you've got something else on or another council, something clash. It's just because you prefer. And I just don't think that that's a reason. You're not taking your governance responsibilities seriously if you just prefer not to. So I'm not supportive of this. I'm sorry. End of story. Thank you.
Thank you. Valid points on both sides. Councillor Richard Hills. Richard, we haven't heard from you yet, but I presume you're there listening.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I speak with... hang on a second. I can hear myself echoing. But today I'm sick, so with irony that I'm speaking opposed to this. I guess I'm worried like Councillor Watson, and I don't think any of us around the table would do that, but I do agree it's possible that you could be, on holiday or in, on the car or doing something else, and then someone texts you and said, quick, jump on for the vote or jump, and I'm concerned that has a potential to be abused, not just now, but in the future. maybe that this should be an opportunity to be just for workshops or something. Workshops would totally make sense, but I'm not thinking all committees would have, a serious vote on them. But things like the budget or things like, significant votes where potentially members weren't in the room for the whole presentations, or there was no proof that they were there listening to the public or whatever it is. I've been listening the whole day today, but I could have been not here and just jumped on. I was supportive of this when I read it, but I guess I wasn't thinking over what potentially could happen in the future. So yeah, I'm a bit stuck because I really do support the opportunity for people to do this, and maybe it is something that we could just do for workshops and things like that, because that makes a lot of sense. But I worry in the future, or maybe it's just governing body we don't allow it, or just the big votes like the budget, but I'm not sure how you would judge that chair by chair. So I'm a bit concerned that I'm supportive, but I'm not also worried. So I'm then not supportive of such a significant change. Maybe it's something we need to bring to a workshop to discuss it more thoroughly.
Thank you. If this were not to go through, it doesn't prevent future changes being made after further workshops, but I think I'd kind of like to get a test of how councillors are thinking about the issues. So, Councillor Sharon Stewart.
Thank you. I sort of agree with what Councillor Hills was talking about. Workshops are probably the time, if we're going to do the Skyping, that's the time to do it. I think for full council meetings, I think the cows or regulatory or audit of risk or whatever, those kind of meetings, if you're on that committee, you should really attempt to be there. But I think with workshops, seem to work really well. And what I liked when we were doing the workshops during the COVID-19 was every member, the mayor went right round the table and asked everybody, so everybody had an opportunity to have a bit of an input. And in fact, we got through our meetings a lot better and a lot faster that way. So,
just not the finance ones until we get to the budget.
yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. What I should remind councillors at the moment, you probably already know, but to change the standing orders, we need a 75% vote, so it's quite a high threshold. So we will take a division on this at the end, and that's a high level to overcome if people are concerned about it. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Worship. I'm prepared to vote in favour of this. Just listening to your comment, Your Worship, about we can always modify it. Also the point that you need 2 days' notice. I take it you have to explain your reason. So the Chief Executive and the Mayor would have to know why you wanted to attend via Skype 2 days out. And just if I can get clarification on that, and if it's within the 2 day period and you can't attend for whatever reason, so you can't Skype in because you haven't given notice, you just have to send your apology, I take it, as per normal. So just clarification on those 2 points. But my question through you, Mr. Chair, is really around the local boards. I see the local boards can dial in and participate via Skype for the meetings. I'm just, are we taking this as a test case before we roll out to the local boards? So my question is really, why are local boards also not providing the same opportunity at this time? Thank you.
Really, the simple answer, through Your Worship, is that because we are aware that the epidemic notice was expiring, or it was going to expire, we thought we should provide you an opportunity to consider how you want to go forward with this. Entirely up to you. I think the comments that you've been making are very helpful to staff because we now have a bit of a feeling for how you're thinking about this. In terms of local boards, I haven't been speaking to local boards. So we do have, we do compare notes from time to time, but in the last few days I haven't been talking to them. They have been looking at our standing orders, and they will be taking note of this discussion and probably following on.
Thank you. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just reliving the lockdown. How's it going? Can you hear me, Phil? You there? You there, Phil?
You were generally saying, Daniel, we can't hear you.
Oh, yeah,
Or
that's right.
Kathy Casey's woohoo.
Yeah, look, we had birds tweeting, we had cats meowing. It was interesting. But look, the thing is about this proposal is the electronic links. It worked because it had to work because of the circumstances, but the circumstances have changed. And when you think about how hard people fought to get elected to this place, I think it's a reasonable obligation on people actually that they need to show up. I think it's quite it's appropriate, and I take on board people need to see other people's body language, and I struggle to hide my views and feelings with my body language from time to time, but it is important that people can relate to each other in the room at the same time. I think that there is an opportunity, and I had to participate in a workshop remotely, but I think that this will have to go to a division. I won't be voting for the amendment because I think that it is perfectly reasonable for people to come to meetings, and if they don't come to meetings, then there are consequences. And we have had some pretty consequential decisions in recent times because of non-attendance. So I'd ask members to reflect upon that. So I thank you for the discussion, Warwick. Thank you for the paper, but respectfully, I won't be voting for it.
Thank you. I mean, probably will be, I think views are becoming reasonably apparent. I don't want to cut people off, but yeah, I don't think you've got a 3/4 majority for this in the room, is my view. Angela Dalton, next.
Thank you. Look, I would support A, B and C. I don't support D for the reasons that have been given, but I think it's entirely appropriate that people could Skype in if it's impossible for them to get here, they're on business for council. It's certainly given an opportunity for other commitments in our local areas or even other meetings to be attended and then be able to Skype into a workshop or a meeting. Up to the member if they feel they're well enough to Skype in if they're ill or recovering. And in emergencies, which I assume is covering things like COVID. So I'm not 100% there on the whole for, because I'm a bit old-fashioned. I too think people should be turning up to a meeting because they should be. They've been elected to. But for those other three examples, I would support Skype.
Thank you. Just to get clarification, Warwick, the other three items are already covered under standing orders, yes. So the only change we'd be making is bolded D and then the bold area under 3.3.4. That would be the addition.
There's a minor change under 3.3.10. So this comes back to the question about attendance by members of the public.
Okay. So we don't need to add those things in, they're already there. So we're effectively voting on whether a person can not attend in person simply by choice as against in those circumstances. Because I think we all agree under A, B and C that's legitimate reasons for not being here.
I don't support it then.
Great. Councillor Casey.
I think it's hilarious that the IT Neanderthal's about to speak in favour of this, because I've had a life-changing period during COVID. I have. Look, no paper. Hey. I want to speak in support of the resolutions. I also would like to agree with Efeso Collins, and that is that we should be using Zoom. We've been using Zoom for the selection of the demographic advisory panels, and it's been incredibly great. Skype was kind of useless. So if we are using it, it should be a really fast platform where you can see everybody. You're elected and you're accountable to the people who elect you. And if you stop turning up for meetings, you won't get back. if you turn up for meetings via Zoom and do a good job, that's your accountability is to your electorate. Nobody can tell you how to do your job. So I don't think for 1 minute that people are going to stay home because they're lazy. They'll stay home because they want to save the planet, don't they, Wayne? And that's what I learned from. You get your life back. You get hours back that you spend travelling from these distant parts or stuck in traffic coming from. I'm hoping to change all your minds. You should all be open-minded and listening. That's what this is about. What we learned in New Zealand through COVID is different ways of working. And here's this council saying, actually, you need to be in your seat. No, you don't, Pippa. You need to be accountable to the people who elected you. And whether you do that by a good Zoom meeting or you do it sitting in your seat, it's over to you. It's not for you to tell me how to behave. So I want you to forget what you spoke about earlier and decide that this is the right way to go. It's what New Zealand is doing. It's what we hope our staff are doing. Our staff have been working really well from home in their jammies. That doesn't matter. It's how you do your work that matters. So please rethink your position on this and give it 75% and at least try it, because it was one of the good things to come out of COVID-19.
There you go, non-verbal.
I'm just sitting here trying to imagine Stephen in his pyjamas working from home, but no, doesn't commute. Sorry, Stephen. Look, everybody wants to speak on this one, and I'm going to go through it because I don't think we need a workshop. I don't think anybody will learn more from a workshop. So have your say here now. Please be brief. I think the result is predetermined at this point, but let's give it a go and try to be concise. Councillor Walker.
I don't agree with that, Mr. Mayor. I think that this is actually an important decision, but I don't think we are going to sort it right now. I'm really concerned that I don't think councillors are as informed as they could be. I agree with Kathy Casey. If we had better platforms and we'd been using them, the experience would have been better. If we're going to do this, then in principle, we should actually apply it to physical attendance at meetings, if we're going to be fair. So are we going to be fair? How far are we going to go here? Okay? If we're going to be principled. So somebody shouldn't be able to vote on an item if they're not attending the item physically. That's what this amounts to. So let's change the standing orders and do that. I've got real concerns. If I apply a number of tests to myself, am I going to be able to participate more effectively? Am I going to be more effective? Frankly, most of the questions I would ask myself, the answer is yes if I'm participating remotely. It's certainly better use of my time. I would suggest that if you apply it to members of the public, it's far better use of their time, because why do they want to come in and sit around a whole meeting if they can engage and participate? And I think the Have Your Say events reflected that. If we're benchmarking ourselves with smart cities, and every now and again we talk about that, I can tell you smart cities that I've visited do just this. And they're sometimes a damn sight smarter than we are. So I've got a real concern that we just take a knee-jerk reaction at this point, based on, frankly, what was a relatively poor experience over the COVID experience. Yes, there were glimmers of light, but frankly, the platform experience on the part of a number of us was not great. So I would still support this, but frankly, my fallback position is to not consider it today if there's a danger of being lost, but for Warwick to come back with a more rounded report with the opportunity for councillors to think a bit more in advance.
Thank you. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Your Worship. Warwick, just a few questions. One of them is, just based on what Councillor Walker's just said, if this loses, and as His Worship the Mayor has said, it's on that track now, but if it does, when can it be brought back again?
Well, there's no timing rule in standing orders about when you can reconsider a standing order at any time.
Wasn't there something in the standing orders that it can only come back after 6 months?
That's when you're revoking a previous resolution.
Yeah. Okay. Second question is...
I suppose you might be, I mean, that might fall into that category in a way.
Well, that's why I mentioned it, because I know it needs, but for that to happen, it needs further that wasn't present at the time for that to happen. But Warwick, I then go back to D that's up on the recommendations. Now, you mentioned that the original notice was either 2 days, had expired for 2 days and it's been renewed. Is that the epidemic preparedness one that you've said in D that is now valid until September?
Yes.
So if we agree to this, it then obviously comes into effect after September.
Yes.
In further question, because just want to get my head around this, if it passes, it can still come back to this for us to revoke this if it passes. So it gets done in September. In the meantime, if we've passed it, we can still bring it back within the time or within September to revoke it if we find out from here until September things are not working out.
The rule around revoking is really relates to individual members bringing stuff back to be revoked. If there's something proposed to be revoked on the basis of a report from the chair or from the chief executive, then that's fine.
Okay, now I remember we ended up discussing this particular issue when it first got into the standing orders a few years ago, and we were all agreeable in regards to using electronic means. And we were agreeable with that, and that's because of the what is in here around, being sick but well enough to participate in the actual meeting, whether it be governing body or the committee of the whole, or for whatever committee there is. So, Warwick, is this really saying that if it gets passed, this is the ability for those that are in that situation or in emergencies as outlined, gives them the ability to participate in that particular meeting?
If it doesn't pass, people in that situation will still be able to, the ability to attend remotely if there's an emergency, if you're sick, or if it's not practicable for you to attend, already exists in standing orders, and that'll continue. And the one about where it's not practicable, that would be the one that would apply to the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, because the chair, as you know, lives down the South Island, I think. Yes.
And just one more question, Your Worship, and I just need to get that clarified in my head so I know where I'm heading with this one. The last question is as a result of the comments that Councillor Watson said around voting. So if you're tuning in electronically, your vote will be counted?
Yes.
In regards to any decision that gets made? And was that put in prior to the order that came out from the government around
That's been the case since it's been possible to attend remotely, since the legislation made it possible. That's what attendance is. Yeah.
Sorry, Your Worship, that's one issue, and I agree with Councillor Watson. That was one issue that I had concerns about, and I actually thought that you couldn't, if you were electronically on there, that your vote wouldn't be counted. I knew it wouldn't be counted for a quorum. I knew that much because you had to be physically in the room. Because it does concern me with what Councillor Watson was talking about earlier. However, in saying that, I've got enough faith with the councillors around our table, that they won't end up using this as a means just to not turn up because I don't feel like turning up. And as a result, Your Worship, I will be voting for this. I will, and for me, the main reason for me is because I do trust the people around this table. I do trust them that they won't end up using anything that's in there to end up sort of just staying home for the sake of staying home. So that's really the key reason for me, Your Worship. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Linda Cooper.
No, it's okay, my question was answered.
Thank you. Councillor Christabi.
So, thank you. Can we just go to the last one? Because I think that's the one I think generally we should be supporting, isn't it? That's about public participation. Are we, because some people say I'm not voting for any of this, but are we opposing that?
No.
No. Okay, so we, generally, can we get rid of that one? The only question about that one there, in something I raised with Warwick, was this question of electronic link versus, now we've got the words audio link or audio visual link. One of my questions, Mayor, that I put to Warwick was, should we restrict it to audio visual link? One of the things I didn't like in our Skype experience was people on phones, and you couldn't see them on the Skype discussion. You know, they were just a phone number, they weren't a person. And I wondered about the control over that from the Secretariat's point of view as well. And then there was a phone and a car, and I just didn't think that was appropriate. So just here, I'm just wondering if there's a feeling to narrow this down to audio-visual link. Now, that's a question, and I'm posing because the language is different in this section, Warwick, to what's above. Above, you talk about electronic link, and here you talk about audio link or audio-visual link, which is electronic link stripped back.
As a member of the public.
Yeah, that's as a member of the public, yeah. Which includes, that section there includes local board members.
Yes.
So, and if they wanted to Skype in. So, look, I'll just pose that question. But look, just going back to this question of voting, because I got confused at the top as well. So there is the ability to be remote and to vote.
Yes, that's always been the case.
Yeah, that's...
ABC.
And I echo the concerns of Councillor Watson, I think somebody else, about the possible manipulation of that, about just dropping in and getting a text, it's time to vote, and the other members have not had their voices heard by that voter. They haven't been around the table, be it virtual or physically. So I also have a very real concern about that. So if there is, I wonder if we can change that. And I'm really keen to change it to audio-visual connection rather than a phone-in.
So just to clarify, Councillor, you're wanting to change because you're not talking about members of the public, you're talking about members of the governing body, and you're looking at D, the first line, to change electronic link to audio-visual link. Is that what your proposal is?
Look, I'm just canvassing this because I'm just posing this quite late. It's very different. That eliminates a phone link. An audio-visual link, there's a much greater sense of presence when there's an audio-visual link. And admittedly, we had lots of breakdowns with Skype, but we will resolve that. Audio-visual link will be really easy soon.
Okay. I might get Warwick to comment on that. The difficulty is, were we to decide that people could come in electronically, and I'm just thinking back to the meetings that we've had during the lockdown, you know, when your system fails and you ring in, because you don't have any choice, then you couldn't vote. That's the disadvantage. I understand what you're saying, but these things are a little bit more complex sometimes than they seem. And with the current quality of our Skype, quite often we deliberately didn't run our audio-visual link because it seemed to affect the way in which we could come in. So, but Warwick, any thoughts on that?
Looking at the standing orders, the thought that I had about where you might place that is under Standing Order 3.3.5, where the heading is Chairperson's Duties, and it sets out a list of things which the chairperson has to check are in place. And perhaps I could read that out. It's reasonably short. Where a member is attending a meeting by electronic link, the chairperson must ensure that A, the technology for the link is available and of suitable quality. B, procedures for using the technology in the meeting will ensure that 1, everyone participating in the meeting can hear each other. 2, the members' attendance by electronic link does not reduce their accountability or accessibility in relation to the meeting. 3, the requirements of Part 7 of Legoima are met, so Part 7 is the meeting requirements. 4, the requirements in these standing orders are met. And 5, the member is able to indicate the member's vote. And in terms of the 4, the requirements in these standing orders are met. I had wondered about in adding on to that, including the requirements of Standing Order 3.3.10, which is to do with confidentiality, which is something that Councillor Darby raised with me. So 3.3.9, confidentiality. A member who is attending a meeting by electronic link must ensure that the meeting's proceedings remain confidential during any times that the public are excluded. At such times, the chairperson may require the member to confirm that no unauthorised people are able to view or hear the proceedings. That covers.
What seems to be happening now, sadly, is this is becoming more complex and not readily able to be resolved here. I thought maybe naively that, okay, everybody had a view, everybody knew how they're going to vote, but there are some complexities here that I don't think we can sort out in this room in this way. And I say that with some regret because we've just spent quite a lot of time debating it. But if we were to do it in a way that took account of a couple of different things, I think it would be better to have albeit a quick workshop on it than not to. I'm sorry about that. That's where I've got to. But Councillor Cooper. Well, look, could I just ask you to reconsider that for a moment? I've got 2 more speakers, and it would kind of be unfair, and one of them's electronic. Yeah, I know that. That's why I'm just asking you. It seems a little unfair to. Two last people left. So could I just ask you to reconsider not...
The reason I'm saying is that you've now determined already unilaterally...
No, I can't determine unilaterally at all. You guys would have to vote for that. So do you mind if I just hear the last 2 speakers quickly? I think that's only fair. Councillor Newman, point of order.
Whilst I can sympathise with what you're asking, standing orders provide for if a closure motion is put, we're going to have a vote on it.
I understand that, and that's why I just checked with Councillor Cooper whether she wanted to persist with that, in which case I would have to put it. And
I do. That's why I did it.
Okay. Well, in which case, my apologies. Yep. Okay. So it's been moved that the motion be put. I'm going to put that as a motion. I've got a seconder for it. Point of order, Councillor Walker. Sorry, I'm hearing a point of order, Councillor Cooper.
So there was an amendment which was moved by myself and seconded on the part of Ken Casey that we do your suggestion, which is the furthest effectively pending a workshop.
No, I'm sorry, I have not received an amendment, and I didn't hear an amendment being put. We can do that. We can have a workshop without having to move that by amendment. Actually, it's been moved that the motion be put, which actually terminates. I need a seconder for that. So do I have a seconder? Be moved that the motion be put. Okay, there we are. We've met standing orders. I'll now ask Councillor Fletcher, please, to come in remotely.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am able to speak to this, I take it, or are you going, has the motion been put? Am I speaking to the motion that the question be put?
No, just to clarify, that lapsed through want of a seconder. So you are the second to last speaker on the substantive motions in front of us. I have received no amendments to that. So it does not stop us if this fails, as it may, because it needs a three-quarters majority, then we may well want to workshop it or at least discuss it to iron out some of the issues that Councillor Darby has met. So if you speak to it as a substantive motion, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that clarification. And I would be willing to move an amendment that this matter have further discussion, because I think that there are points where clarity is required. In a way, I feel a little bit hypocritical because over the years, and you might have participated in a parliamentary sense as I did, that I was very opposed to proxy voting. Back in the day, one had to turn up and put one's hand on the, in the eyes lobby or the nose lobby, and I felt that owning that vote and that accountability was really important. And frankly, I think there are some who now feel that proxy voting with Parliament has certainly diminished some of the spontaneity and perhaps has strengthened the hands of political parties in an unhealthy way. But probably then I didn't anticipate that people's lives can change, not by choice, but simply that they do. And the issue today is one of, should we be able to exercise a vote in the absence of being present in the meeting room? In my own case, as you know, it's just a strange set of circumstances. I had dislocated both of my hips in nursing my husband, and I was required to have bilateral hip surgery, which is not a small undertaking. And right at the moment, I am being discouraged mainly because we have too long meetings and sitting still, and that's actually not very good from a healing perspective. But I would hate to think that I could not have participated in the debates that we have had during the emergency period in COVID lockdown. So I'm wanting to make sure that we exercise this carefully and that there is accountability there. But for those people, because of circumstances that they cannot control, it seems a shame that we not make some provision for those extraordinary circumstances that people may find themselves into from time to time. So if it was to go back to a workshop, could I also please add to the workshop the need for the way in which we conduct our meetings? It is simply not healthy, as I have found out to my detriment, for us to sit for 8 hours straight. I know that you're trying really hard to have people break for lunches and small breaks, but whether or not there is a provision for some standing desks or some other way of accommodating people, but I will be adding my support to those who want to see the extension to enable voting to take place. But perhaps there does need to be some further tightening up of the provisions for the sets of circumstances that people might find themselves in, that they may need to participate electronically. And for the record, I have tried to use the video camera today and our technology has not allowed it. So I share the concern expressed by Councillor Darby that it is actually good to be able to see the person and to participate in the debate in a better way. But I appreciate the fact that we've actually had the opportunity to have this discussion. And I'd like to move, because I can see the other person who's also participating electronically today, Councillor Hills. I would like to move that the matter be referred back to a workshop for further consideration.
Thank you very much. I've made a note. I've just slightly changed it because my wording was different. But so the motion is, and it's been moved by Councillor Fletcher, that this matter be referred to a workshop for further consideration, seconded by Richard Hills. I think the easy way to resolve this is simply, actually, I don't think we can do this simply. If we're going to have a vote on it, well, the two people that are following us electronically, I think we've probably got to do it by a roll call, by a division. So the motion is that this matter be referred to a workshop for further consideration. I'll ask Sandra to take a roll call.
Mayor Goff.
Yes.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
Yes.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Coombe. Councillor Cooper.
No.
Councillor Dalton.
No.
Councillor Darby.
Yes.
Councillor Filipina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes.
Councillor Hills.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Mulholland. Councillor Mulholland.
Sorry, no, I'm just asking a technical question because I didn't get to speak and everyone else did. I was the last person. Can I abstain from this because I never got to say my thoughts?
Thank you.
Councillor Newman.
No.
Councillor Sayers.
For.
Councillor Simpson.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Absolutely.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
Councillor Young.
For.
So that's carried, hey? 13 to 5.
Glory.
Sorry, quiet while you're waiting for the result of the ballot. That's as part of standing orders. The vote is...
Carried 13 votes to 5.
That's carried 13 votes for 5, and if I'd followed some earlier advice, so I probably could have saved half an hour discussion. Anyway, my apologies to Councillor Mulholland, who was the last one on, but once I get a motion like that, then I have to take that motion as an amendment. So I'm sorry, Warwick. This matter will now be referred to a workshop, but I think the complexities that have been raised by Councillor Darby and the fair points do need to be discussed in a way that we can't in this room in this manner. Okay, so